Focus on yourself and stay silent in 2026 is not a slogan. It is a psychological strategy for reclaiming power in a world addicted to noise. Most people feel exhausted not because they do too much, but because they explain too much. They leak their energy through constant reaction, constant justification, constant performance for an audience that is not invested in their growth. Behavioral psychology shows us that attention is a finite resource, and wherever attention goes, identity follows. When your attention is scattered across opinions, validation, arguments, and proving yourself, your sense of self becomes fragile and externally controlled. Silence is not weakness here, it is containment. It is the ability to hold your thoughts, plans, emotions, and intentions without immediately releasing them for approval or attack. When you stop narrating your life to everyone, you start actually living it. This is the foundation of inner authority, and without inner authority, confidence is just noise pretending to be strength. Self-focus is often misunderstood as selfishness, but psychologically, it is self-regulation. A regulated person does not need to announce their boundaries. Their behavior enforces them. When you focus on yourself, you are not ignoring the world. You are prioritizing internal alignment over external chaos. Studies on emotional intelligence show that people with higher self-awareness respond rather than react, and this alone changes how others perceive and treat them. Silence creates a pause between stimulus and response, and in that pause lies freedom. The person who can pause is the person who cannot be easily manipulated. They do not rush to defend, explain, or correct every misunderstanding because they understand a deeper truth. People reveal more about themselves when you stop interrupting them with your words. Strategic silence allows patterns to surface, intentions to expose themselves, and reality to speak without distortion. In 2026, the most powerful shift you can make is to stop volunteering information about your inner world to people who have not earned access to it. Oversharing is not honesty. It is often anxiety-seeking relief. From a psychological standpoint, when you constantly disclose your struggles, goals, or next moves, you weaken your sense of internal safety. Your nervous system stays activated because you are waiting for feedback, approval, or reaction. Silence calms the nervous system. It signals to your brain that you are safe enough to hold yourself. This is why disciplined individuals appear calm even under pressure. They are not suppressing emotion. They are managing it. They understand that not every feeling requires expression, and not every thought deserves a voice. This restraint builds emotional muscle, the same way physical resistance builds strength. There is also a social dynamic at play that most people overlook. The more you talk, the more predictable you become. Predictability makes you easy to dismiss, label, or control. Silence disrupts expectation. When you stop reacting on cue, people recalibrate around you. Behavioral research on power dynamics consistently shows that the person who speaks less and listens more is perceived as more competent and authoritative, even when they say nothing extraordinary. This is not about playing games, it is about understanding human perception. When you remove yourself from constant commentary, your presence becomes heavier, more deliberate. Your words, when you do speak, carry weight because they are rare and intentional. Silence teaches others how to treat you without you having to demand respect. Focusing on yourself also means disengaging from the illusion that you must be seen to be valued. Modern culture rewards visibility, but psychology rewards consistency. The most stable identities are built in private through repeated actions that no one applauds. When you stay silent, you redirect energy from image management to self-mastery. You start asking different questions, not, how do I look, but, am I improving? Not, do they understand me, but do I understand myself? This shift changes behavior at a cellular level. Your habits become quieter, cleaner, and more disciplined. You stop negotiating with your impulses because you are no longer performing for an audience. You become accountable to your own standards, and that is where real confidence is born. Silence also protects your goals. Psychologically, when you announce intentions prematurely, your brain receives a false sense of completion. Dopamine is released as if the work has already been done, which reduces follow-through. This is why many people talk about change more than they embody it. When you keep your plans private, you preserve motivational tension. You allow desire to mature into action without interference. You also protect yourself from doubt, comparison, and subtle sabotage, whether intentional or not. Not everyone who listens to you wants you to win, and not everyone who advises you understands your path. Silence filters noise before it ever enters your system. It is not secrecy born of fear, but discretion born of wisdom. Staying silent does not mean becoming passive or invisible. It means choosing where and when to invest your voice. Emotionally mature individuals do not argue to be understood. They observe to understand. They know that defending yourself too often signals insecurity, even when you are right. From a behavioral lens, the need to correct others is often tied to ego protection rather than truth. When you let people think what they want, you free yourself from the exhausting role of self-advocate in every room. Your consistency becomes your defense. Over time, reality speaks louder than explanation ever could. This is how quiet reputations are built, not through self-promotion, but through aligned behavior repeated over time. There is a deep internal shift that happens when you stop narrating your struggles. You start processing them instead. Silence forces you inward, and inward is where emotional intelligence is refined. You begin to notice patterns in your reactions, triggers in your body, and stories in your mind that no longer serve you. This awareness is uncomfortable at first, because distraction has been your shield. But discomfort is not danger. The ability to sit with yourself without immediately escaping into noise is a marker of psychological strength. When you can be alone with your thoughts without collapsing or compulsively sharing them, you gain sovereignty over your internal world. That sovereignty is what makes you unshakable externally. Focusing on yourself also means accepting that not everyone will understand your silence, and that is part of the discipline. Some will project, assume, or misinterpret. This is where emotional maturity is tested. Do you rush to clarify, or do you stay grounded in what you know is true? Psychology teaches us that self-trust reduces the need for external validation. The more you trust your own judgment, the less threatened you feel by misunderstanding. Silence becomes a boundary that protects your energy and your direction. You stop chasing closure, explanations, and final words. You realize that peace does not come from being understood, but from being aligned. As you move through 2026 with this mindset, you will notice something subtle but powerful. Your reactions slow down. Your decisions become cleaner. Your presence becomes steadier. This is not because life becomes easier, but because you become more centered. You are no longer pulled into every emotional current around you. You respond with intention rather than reflex. This is the psychological advantage of self-focus and silence. It gives you time. Time to think, time to choose, time to grow. And time, when used deliberately, compounds into power. The world will continue to be loud, reactive, and demanding. You do not need to match its volume to survive it. By focusing on yourself and staying silent, you remove yourself from unnecessary battles and conserve energy for the ones that matter. You begin rebuilding power from the inside out, not through dominance or display, but through restraint, clarity, and discipline. This is how identities are reshaped, not in moments of attention, but in long stretches of quiet commitment. And once that foundation is set, nothing external can easily shake it. As you continue this path, the next layer of growth emerges not from what you do, but from what you refuse to engage with. Emotional restraint is not suppression, it is selection. Psychology makes a clear distinction between avoidance and regulation. Avoidance is fear-based, while regulation is choice-based. When you stay silent in moments that once triggered you, you are not ignoring reality. You are retraining your nervous system. You are teaching your brain that not every stimulus is a threat, and not every provocation requires a response. This rewiring changes how stress is processed in the body. Cortisol levels stabilize, impulsive reactions decrease and clarity increases. Over time, this restraint becomes instinctive. You no longer feel the urge to jump into explanations, arguments, or emotional displays because your sense of self is no longer tied to immediate expression. Detachment from noise is one of the most misunderstood skills in emotional intelligence. Many assume detachment means indifference, but psychologically it means non-attachment to outcomes you cannot control. When you emotionally detach from opinions, gossip, comparison, and constant updates about others' lives, you create mental space. That space is where insight forms. The brain needs silence to integrate experience, just as the body needs rest to rebuild muscle. Constant engagement keeps you reactive and fragmented. Strategic silence allows consolidation. You start seeing situations more objectively without the fog of emotion. This does not make you cold, it makes you precise. Precision in emotional response is what separates maturity from impulsivity. One of the greatest drains on human energy is the need to be emotionally available to everyone. When you focus on yourself, you begin to limit access, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. Behavioral psychology shows that boundaries reduce resentment and burnout. When you stop responding to every message, comment, or emotional pull, you reclaim authority over your time and attention. At first, this may feel uncomfortable, even selfish, because you are used to equating responsiveness with worth. But over time, you notice a shift. Your energy stabilizes. You are no longer emotionally exhausted by conversations that go nowhere. You become selective, and selectivity is a form of discipline. Discipline always feels restrictive before it feels freeing. Emotional restraint also changes how you experience conflict. Instead of escalating, you slow it down. Instead of defending, you observe. Most conflicts are not about facts. They are about unmet emotional needs and fragile egos. When you remain silent, you allow those dynamics to reveal themselves. People often talk themselves into clarity when you give them space. This is not manipulation. It is patience. Silence acts as a mirror. It reflects intensity back to the source without absorbing it. Over time, you become known as someone who does not get pulled into drama, not because you are disengaged, but because you are grounded. That grounding becomes a form of quiet authority that others instinctively respect. Detaching from noise also means disengaging from constant comparison. Social comparison is one of the strongest triggers of anxiety and self-doubt. When you constantly monitor others' progress, opinions, or lifestyles, your brain enters a loop of evaluation that never ends. This erodes self-trust. By staying silent and focused inward, you interrupt that loop. You start measuring yourself against your own values instead of someone else's highlight reel. Psychology shows that intrinsic motivation driven by internal standards, leads to higher satisfaction and resilience than extrinsic motivation. When you stop broadcasting and start building privately, your motivation becomes cleaner and more sustainable. There will be moments when silence feels like loss. You may feel overlooked, misunderstood, or forgotten. This is where emotional maturity deepens. The urge to reinsert yourself into noise is often rooted in fear of insignificance. But insignificance is not created by silence, it is created by inconsistency. When you continue showing up for your own commitments, even when no one is watching, your identity strengthens. You begin to feel solid regardless of recognition. This internal solidity is what allows you to stay calm when others seek attention through chaos. You no longer need to compete for space. You know who you are without needing to announce it. Restraint also sharpens discernment. When you speak less, you listen more, not just to words, but to tone, timing, and behavior. You notice who respects your silence and who resents it. You see who tries to provoke reactions and who can sit in calm. These observations are invaluable. They inform where you invest your energy moving forward. Psychology teaches us that patterns, not promises, predict behavior. Silence gives you access to patterns. You stop being distracted by charm, explanations, or emotional displays, and you start seeing consistency, or the lack of it. This awareness protects you from misplaced trust and unnecessary disappointment. Another powerful shift happens internally when you detach from noise. Your emotional baseline stabilizes. Instead of swinging between highs and lows based on external events, you develop a steadier internal climate. This does not mean you feel less. It means your feelings no longer control you. Emotional regulation allows emotions to pass through without hijacking behavior. You can feel anger without acting on it, disappointment without collapsing into it, excitement without impulsivity. This steadiness is often mistaken for emotional distance, but it is actually emotional strength. You are no longer ruled by mood. You are guided by intention. Silence also gives grief, fear, and uncertainty room to be processed properly. When you constantly talk through emotions, you sometimes avoid fully feeling them. Silence forces presence. It invites reflection. It allows emotions to complete their cycle instead of being prematurely discharged. This is essential for psychological health. Unprocessed emotion does not disappear. It resurfaces as anxiety, irritability, or fatigue. By staying quiet and focused, you give yourself the space to metabolize experience. You become emotionally lighter, not heavier. This lightness is not superficial happiness, but depth without overwhelm. As detachment grows, you may notice that fewer things feel personal. This is a significant milestone in emotional maturity. When you realize that most behavior is driven by others' internal struggles, not by you, your need to react diminishes. You stop internalizing other people's moods, opinions, or projections. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you compassionate without self-sacrifice. You can care without carrying. You can understand without absorbing. This balance is rare, and it is built through deliberate restraint over time. Staying silent also refines your inner dialogue. When external noise decreases, internal noise becomes more audible. At first, this can be uncomfortable because you become aware of self-doubt, old narratives, and limiting beliefs that were previously drowned out. But awareness precedes change. By listening to your own mind, you gain the opportunity to challenge it. You begin replacing reactive thoughts with intentional ones. You question assumptions instead of acting on them. This cognitive discipline strengthens mental resilience. Over time, your thoughts become calmer, more structured, and more supportive of your long-term goals. In 2026, emotional restraint and detachment from noise are not about withdrawal from life, but about deeper engagement with what matters. You stop wasting emotional energy on temporary distractions and start investing it in lasting growth. Your silence becomes a filter. It keeps out what drains you and amplifies what builds you. You begin to feel less rushed, less pressured, and more deliberate. This is not because the world slows down, but because you do. As this phase settles in, something important becomes clear. You are no longer trying to control outcomes or people. You are controlling yourself. This shift is subtle but profound. Control over self is the highest form of power, and it cannot be taken away by opinion, circumstance, or noise. It is built quietly, moment by moment, through restraint, reflection, and focus. And once this foundation is established, the next transformation begins, not in how you feel, but in how you show up consistently, calmly, and confidently over time. As this discipline matures, you begin to embody a different kind of confidence, one that does not announce itself or seek confirmation. Quiet confidence is not built through bold declarations, but through alignment between thought, action, and restraint. Psychology tells us that identity is shaped by repeated behavior, not intention. When you consistently choose focus over distraction, silence over reaction, and discipline over impulse, your self-image shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to become strong and start experiencing yourself as someone who already is. This internal shift changes posture, tone, and presence without effort. Others may sense it before you do. It is not intimidating or loud, it is stable. Stability is deeply persuasive because it signals self-trust. Consistency is where this transformation becomes visible in results. When you are no longer expending energy on explanation or emotional turbulence, that energy is redirected into action. Small, repeated actions done quietly compound faster than sporadic bursts of visible effort. Behavioral psychology calls this identity-based habit formation. You act in ways that confirm who you believe you are, and each action reinforces that belief. Silence protects this process. There is no pressure to perform, impress, or compare. You work steadily, even when progress is invisible. Over time, this consistency produces outcomes that feel sudden to others but were inevitable to you. This is the advantage of moving quietly. You are not distracted by reaction. You are guided by routine. Self-mastery reveals itself most clearly under pressure. When challenges arise, you do not rush to explain your struggle or broadcast your frustration. You stay composed, not because you feel nothing, but because you have learned to carry discomfort without leaking it. Emotional intelligence is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about staying functional inside it. This capacity changes how others respond to you. People trust those who remain calm in uncertainty. They listen to those who are not desperate to be heard. Your silence in difficulty communicates capability more loudly than any reassurance ever could. As your behavior stabilizes, your boundaries become effortless. You no longer need to justify your limits because your consistency enforces them. You show up when you say you will, you disengage when something no longer aligns, and you do so without drama. This reliability strengthens your sense of integrity. Integrity is psychological coherence, the feeling that your actions match your values. When coherence increases, anxiety decreases. Much of anxiety comes from internal contradiction, saying yes when you mean no, speaking when you need space, reacting when stillness would serve you better. By staying silent and focused, those contradictions dissolve. You feel cleaner inside, less fragmented. Over time, your relationship with attention changes. You are no longer pulled toward it. You are indifferent to it. This indifference is not apathy, but freedom. When you stop chasing attention, attention often finds you. But by then, you no longer need it to validate your direction. Your motivation is internal, anchored in standards rather than applause. This makes you resilient in both success and failure. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not dismantle you. Emotional balance becomes your default state, not something you have to fight for. Quiet confidence also reshapes how you communicate when you do speak. Your words become precise, measured, and intentional. You do not over-explain because you trust your position. You do not overpromise because you respect reality. People listen more closely because your voice is not competing for space. Psychology shows that scarcity increases perceived value, and this applies to speech as much as anything else. When your words are rare, they are taken seriously. This is not manipulation. It is alignment between presence and expression. As self-mastery deepens, you begin to experience time differently. You are less rushed, even when busy. You prioritize long-term direction over short-term relief. Impulses lose their urgency. You can sit with uncertainty without needing immediate resolution. This patience is a byproduct of inner focus. You trust the process because you are committed to it. You understand that identity is not built in moments of intensity, but in seasons of consistency. Silence supports this patience by removing the pressure to constantly signal progress. There is also a profound emotional shift that occurs when you stop explaining yourself. You release the need to be understood by everyone. This is not resignation, it is acceptance of reality. Not all understanding is necessary, and not all misunderstanding is harmful. When you let go of that burden, your emotional load lightens. You stop rehearsing conversations that may never happen. You stop defending a version of yourself that no longer exists. You allow people to meet you where you are, or not at all. This selectivity preserves your energy and sharpens your sense of self. By this stage, your silence is no longer a tactic. It is a trait. It reflects inner order. You are not withholding. You are grounded. You engage deeply with your own growth, values, and responsibilities. You take care of your mind, body, and habits with quiet discipline. This self-care is not aesthetic or performative. It is functional. You sleep, train, work, and reflect with intention. These routines anchor you. When life destabilizes, you return to them. This is self-mastery in practice, not theory. As results begin to show, they speak on your behalf. Your life becomes coherent. Your choices make sense. Your progress is visible without announcement. People may ask what changed, but you will know the answer is not a single event or mindset, but a series of quiet decisions made consistently. Focus replaced distraction. Silence replaced reaction. Discipline replaced impulse. This is how transformation actually happens, not dramatically, but deliberately. In 2026, focusing on yourself and staying silent is not about withdrawal from the world. It is about standing firmly within yourself. You are present without being reactive, confident without being loud, disciplined without being rigid. You move forward without needing permission, explanation, or validation. Your power is internal, portable, and stable. And once built, it does not need to be defended, because it is evident in how you live, how you choose, and how you remain steady no matter what surrounds you.